Wilds has been out for just over a year and the final title update 4 has released, we've gotten essentially the complete package for the base game of Wilds. We are certainly certain to get a few event quests here and there, but for the most part, all of the new content has been released. Well, meaningful new content. And I've noticed something with Wild, something that I haven't really seen discussed but has been brought up several times regarding Rise, and that is the fact that the game didn't feel finished when it was initially released. Now, with Wilds, that was attributed to certain world events that were happening at the time, but I'm not positive that that was the case. The fact that it wasn't until the title updates that the game seemed to really conclude the story, I feel is the exact same situation we have with Wilds. Sure, the title updates introduced new monsters, as they usually do, but it also really concluded the story and finished up what the end game would be, which is the Gogma Ardean grind. I feel like Monster Hunter may be moving in a new direction, a more live service type of feel, where instead of the title updates feeling like bonus material, it's more so that the title updates are the finishing touches to what the developers wish us to think of as the complete package. Or at least that's my opinion on it. So, now that Wilds has been completed, I think now is a great time to look back and to think about all the things that I love about Wilds and some of the things that I really didn't love about it. And before we get started to discuss the elephant in the room, I will not be mentioning the performance issues. It was major. It was a huge setback for the game. It affected me personally, even though several people will take note of it but say it didn't affect them. I was affected, but at the same time, I'd like this video to focus on the content of the game more so than anything else. And with that, here are 5 things that I loved about Monster Hunter Wilds and 5 things that I really didn't like, with 1 bonus thrown in. For the bonus item, a thing I really didn't like about Wilds is the star system. Now, on the surface, the star system seemed neat. It was definitely different, and it was reminiscent of the special investigation system of Sunbreak, which I was a huge fan of. But outside of 1 or 2 event quests or optional quests, to me, it failed on the biggest promise that it didn't really make, but I was hoping it was making, which was a way to keep early monsters relevant near the end game. I personally love early monsters. A lot of my favorite monsters end up being the early monsters because I hunt them so much. And am more likely to wear their armor or have their look before I settle into a set that really works for me. I'm just switching according to what looks coolest at the time. And I was hoping that this star system would be a way to keep those monsters relevant throughout nearly the entire game, with the exception of maybe the latest of late game monsters. And yes, we have our 10-star Rompopolo event quest that's very different and out there, as event quests should be, but we don't have an 8-star Chatacabra fight. We don't have a 9-star Cumatrice fight. I don't remember the last time I actually hunted a Hirabami. So for me, it was a bit of a letdown, and what the star system did do was make overtuned versions of monsters that you could fight for the extra challenge, which for the most part I ignored. Yeah, I would hunt a 9-star tempered Seregios to prove that I could, but after that was done, I had no desire to hunt a 9-star tempered Seregios again. If I felt like experiencing a Seregios fight, I would go to the 7-star version. Not just because it was easier, but yes, because it was easier, and the rewards weren't something I was specifically looking for, but also because for a lot of these monsters, the sweet spot of difficulty and challenge to enjoyment is not their hardest version. Some of them can be a little frustrating, some of them can feel a little cheap. Yes, some of them really shine, like a Jarakan when you fight his hardest version and you realize that he was actually designed as a better fight than his lower level version would make you think. And making him just a little bit harder made him much more interesting. But for the most part, just adding damage, just adding health to monsters don't make them that interesting to me. If I'm on a map and I see a 8-star version of a monster and there just happened to be a 6-star version of the same monster on that map, and I was only there because I felt like experiencing that monster's fight, I don't really have a reason to go for the strongest monster. But on the flip side, and despite everything I just said, I really wrestled with putting the star system in my worst things about Wild or my best things about Wild. Because despite everything that I just said, it did make certain monsters more relevant for longer. Definitely not as long as I would have liked them to be, but I do like that we had harder versions of certain monsters fights where you weren't just going to stomp them into the ground in a minute and 10 seconds. So maybe I didn't hunt a 8-star Chatacabra, but I've definitely hunted Chatacabra way more than I would have if the star system didn't exist. So, getting to the list proper, number 5, and this is in no particular order, thing that I really didn't like about Wilds was the way the environmental traps in endemic life were used. I really loved the way endemic life were used in Sunbreak as additional items, additional weapons. It made it way more impactful when you found yourself near them or when the fight would navigate to a part of the environment where you could set up wall bangs into elemental exploding bugs or something like that. And to me, that's really lacking in Wilds. Going back to the world system of endemic life or just in one spot, it's usually more of a hassle than anything else to try to get the monster in one of the traps. I mean, on the Windward Plain, that group of paratoads near the water, near the Deshagama's nest area, I've never used them. I've used the vine traps in the trees a few times, but for the most part, monsters don't go near there. And even if they do, you might be standing near a toad ready to kick it just to get knocked by a monster because your timing was off, or the monster rushes past you and hits you and doesn't even get hit by the toad. It just feels like a step backwards that the environmental traps that are there for your advantage don't really feel like they're that much of an advantage. I would have loved an expansion on the wild system where they had more endemic life that you could use as items, or ways that you could set up the environment as traps that was a little more flexible. I mean, even Gemma and Werner as hunter assistants, it's really hard to see their icon on the minimap. I almost never know they're there unless they yell out to me. The fights rarely work their way near them. Outside of the quest to unlock them on the maps, I don't think I've ever used their assistant traps. It would be much more interesting if you perhaps had an item on your item bar where you could send out something similar to an SOS flare and, I don't know, call them to your area or at least general vicinity. Knowing they're on the map, sometimes mid-hunt as I'm chasing the monster to a new area and I run by where Werner or Gemma was, I just think, oh, okay. And then the fight continues past them because the monster's already left. Now, switching to one of my favorite things about Wilds, my number 5, even though, again, in no particular order, but this would probably be my favorite thing now that I think about it, is the fact that breaking certain monsters' parts affects the monsters. I really loved in World that cutting off a Rathian's tail mean it couldn't poison you with its flip, because 1, I hate that move, but 2, it gave you a real incentive to cut off the tail besides any tail swipe attacks have a little less range. It felt like it was more meaningful, and I was way more motivated to go for the tail. And I love that in Wilds, they've expanded that to the wings of flying monsters. Breaking the wings of flying monsters makes them not fly as often, and it makes them way more unstable in the air. And, it seems to me anyway, make it easier to knock them out of the air. Flying monsters flying is one of the most annoying things about Monster Hunter, so that being in the game, it really makes it feel worthwhile to go for the wings, and you feel like you making progress in the hunt where you can do something that's going to make the overall hunt easier. I would love to see an expansion on this, like maybe breaking Gravios' stomach means he can't do some of his gas attacks, or maybe breaking Deshagama's front paws makes it so that he can't do his huge damaging ground swipe, or something like that. So, number 4 on things I like least about Wilds is the entire Gogma slash Ardian endgame. Now, to me, I never really engaged with Ardian weapons before the Gogmazios update. The power increase wasn't so severe, and I didn't like how most of them looked, and I didn't like the RNG system. I made a few Ardian weapons, but I was never that invested in the grind because, again, the power increase wasn't so severe, and I liked how so many of the other monster weapons looked. I really liked the weapon design in Wilds. So it wasn't until Gogmazios, partly because the in-title update monsters were stronger, and partly because I liked the way the Gogma Ardian weapons looked, that I really get into the grind, and I didn't like it at all. I can hunt Gogmazios 10 or 11 times and get enough materials for several rolls and still not get the best stats, still not get the best skills. And it's not even that I just don't get the best. I can feel like I've wasted my materials by rolling again and again and again and still not even getting anything useful. So I found the Gogma endgame unfun, and once I had weapons that I could beat the final monsters with, I just didn't feel the need to try to get even stronger by going through the RNG grind. Now, the number 4 thing that I liked most about Wilds was giving the Palico and the Hunter voices. I know this is very controversial, and a lot of people didn't like the Palico voices or wanted to turn them off. I really like that the Palico talks. I like that my Palico has a personality, especially because I gave him a very unique voice that I find very funny. But it's also very useful during the fights. He does call outs, he tells you when the monster is limping, he tells you when another monster joins the fight. Yeah, it's all things that you don't really need him to tell, but it adds to the flavor of the fights, and I like it. And carrying over the hunter having dialogue during the fights from Sunbreak, which I liked. I really like that we have a hunter voice in cutscenes and Wilds. I mean, would the by my own order, I will slay Zoshia been anywhere near as cool if our handler was saying it for us? Or if the hunter just did it without speaking, or with a couple of grunts and nods. No, I really like that the hunter talks now, and I hope that's something they keep going forward. I like my hunter having a personality. And my number 3 thing that I disliked most about Wilds was a real lack of NPC side quests. Now, this will lead more into my next point, but so many NPCs in this game don't have the fleshed out personality that I feel like they could have if we got some side quests with them. We really don't get to know much about many of these NPCs. And comparing it to something like Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, where the NPCs had so much personality and were so funny and often made me laugh out loud with how funny they were, it's a missed opportunity for Wilds to have side content, side quests, and use that as an opportunity to interject some of that humor and silliness that's really been lost in Wilds that I hope comes back, at least probably not in the Master Rank, but maybe in the handheld game that'll come out in the next year or so, probably 2. But there's all these locales, there's all these NPCs, and outside of being invited for a meal and brief interactions during the story, you don't get to experience much of the world with them. And it just would have been neat if the NPCs had some meaningful side quests that would make you think about them more. I mean, at current, there's only 2 NPCs that I really think about when I think of side quests, or, well, when I think about NPCs at all, and that's Mina, because of the Gormagala Nadia side quest that she got in Title Update 4, and also whoever the Fisher fellow's name is, who I don't remember right now, but those were both memorable side characters, and to see so many faces that I'll at least recognize, because I know I've seen them at camp a few times, it would have just been nice if we got to know them a little more. Now, for my number 3 thing that I liked most about Wilds is that there were so many monsters in the world. I loved that there were so many small monsters in herds. I loved that there were so many groupings of creatures everywhere. I mean, a pretty recent experience I had in the Windward Plains is I'm fighting a Balahara, and I get hit from behind by another Balahara, and at first I'm thinking, wait, where did that attack come from? That couldn't have been, oh, there's another monster here. And while getting smacked around by these two Balaharas, I do a dodge roll over the dune, and on the other side of the dune, a Seregios was fighting either a Cumatrice or a Chotacabra, I don't remember. But it was like 30 feet away from me, and I didn't even know it was there. And I just love that there are so many monsters on the map, that there are so many small monsters, so many large monsters, that the monsters interact and go through their own routines while you're on the map. It really makes the world feel more alive. Which is in direct contrast to my next number 2 thing I disliked most about Wilds. I keep going back and forth between disliked, won't say hated, didn't love, but disliked about Wilds, and that was that so much of the rest of the world didn't really feel alive. I really didn't like the super on rails story experience that just felt like it catapulted you from locale to locale, encounter with people to encounter with people, and now you're at the end. I don't love the old style Monster Hunter of do multiple quests and now the next urgent quest is available, but it would have been nice if the brakes were put on just a little to give you some time to exist in the world, where sure, you can stop and do a couple of investigations whenever you want, but it would have been nice if it didn't feel like the game was pushing you so quickly towards the end, especially as you blaze past locales and NPCs. Where sure, you came back to many of them later, but I just remember the first time going to the Oil Well Basin, and I think you do one hunt there before you're now in the Ice Shard Cliffs. And I just remember thinking, oh, I'm done with that area already? I barely got to see anything, which again, you do come back eventually. And yes, you can do some investigations or expeditions and go off on your own, but like I said, I wish it didn't feel like the game was pushing you so quickly to the end of the main story. And on that same note, kind of rolled into the same point, I really didn't like the maps of Wilds. So many maps look great in concept or seem interesting when you look at what's in them, but to be in the maps, to explore these environments, it's nothing compared to World and their intricately designed maps, where after hours and hours and doing all of the paw swap treasure hunts and going through every inch of the ancient forest, I can still get lost in there because there's so many things you'll find. There's so many little nooks that might have secret gathering nodes or a shortcut you didn't realize was there. There's really nothing in Wilds like that. And I think it's because of the Sacred. I think the Sacred autopiloting you to monsters was a mistake. You already see where the monster is. I think it would have been better to have a Palamute style system where you can ride it and control it directly, because it feels like the design philosophy of the maps was something like, you're not going to look around here anyway, so why put anything here? There's just nowhere near the level of intricacy in the design. And if you see a corner, there's no real reason to look around that corner, because you're not going to find a crawl space that leads to a cave that has something neat in there, that also leads to a drop that brings you to another part of the map. And you're like, oh, I didn't know this was here. There's nothing really like that in Wilds. And I think that's a shame. Even Sunbreak, to have much simpler maps, also had a lot of little secrets, a lot of verticality, a lot of little areas that you'd either have to go around something or run up a wall or blow up something, and you had something to find. World had its paw swaps that, like I mentioned, led to the treasure tips that led you to try to explore the map and use the tip to find where the treasures were hidden. Rise, I forgot exactly what it was. Something to collect, I think it was lore. I think each map had a collection of lore secrets that you could find. But there was a lot to explore and a reason to explore. And Wilds doesn't really have a reason to explore the map. So many of the maps are a collection of rooms with hallways, is the way I think of it. And the Sacred is there to autopilot you through the hallways, through the rooms to get to the next room, because that's where the monster is. And I just think it's a shame, because the environments do have some really interesting aspects to them. I just wish I had more of a reason to fully explore it. So yeah, I'll roll that all into one. Maps, story, overall experience. The world just doesn't feel as alive as it could, especially when it comes to the villages, the NPCs, the people. your experience with the world. So much seems like it was put emphasis on the monsters making the environment feel more alive instead of the entire experience making the world feel more alive. Now, number two thing that I liked most about Wilds, and I promise I will not spend as much time on my remaining items as I did the previous ones, is the build strength. Now, a lot has been said about how it basically feels like we're in master rank already. Our hunter's already so strong. How much stronger could we really get? How many more skills can we fit? And I feel like this might be missing the point. I could be wrong, but to me, there is a huge opportunity here. Going all the way back to 4th gen, because that's as far back as I can go, it was extremely hard to get multiple skills into an armor set. And certain skills at certain levels were nigh impossible unless you crafted armor that also had those skills. You had to be very selective, and even in World and Iceborne, where it's a little easier, it's still to the point where you have to decide, do I want defensive skills, or do I want comfy skills, or do I want all attack skills? And if you want all attack skills, like most people do, you don't get the utility skills, you don't get the comfy skills. So yes, in Wilds, you can at this point have full resentment, full weakness exploit, full crit boost, full, I don't know, maximum might, full perfectionist. But you're also at a point where you can have some focus and some quick sheath and some speed eating and some recovery up and some weakness exploit and some crit boost. You can have other skills but not feel like you're sacrificing all of your extra damage. To me, that's the real benefit of being able to fit so many skills in your builds in Wild. Not you can make the biggest glass cannon you can, but the fact that you can fit plenty of attack, plenty of defense, and still have a couple of things in your build just because it more aligns with how you want to be as a hunter. And I think that's really great. Now, my number one thing that I like least about Monster Hunter Wilds is the lack of really creative event quests. We have the Rompopolo 10-star quest. We have the Triple Blanganga Arena Tempered Blanganga Arena quests. Say that 10 times fast. We have Legiacrix in the arena if you want to fight him and not go through his whole underwater section. To me, those are all great, but almost every other event quest is just fight this monster, get this crafting material. Fight this monster, get this layered armor set. There's nothing really that crazy and out there, and I want crazy out there quests. I would want to fight a Rathalos that's the size of a Chatacabra. Or surprise, Guardian Chatacabra, but it's only in this event quests. Or I don't know, something wacky like a Cumatrice that has Bullfango's moveset, thinking about the giant Mosswine from Monster Hunter World. It's something I really hope we see in the Master Rank. I really want to see more kooky, inventive, fun, out there event quests. And now, my number one thing that I like, not most, because it's not in any particular order, but my number one thing, I guess that's really misleading to say, isn't it? The last thing on my list of things that I like most about Monster Hunter Wilds is the seamless hunts. I really love that you can go out into the map and just hunt monsters. I have absolutely hunted way more monsters than I would have otherwise because I'm not going to think to do a Deshagama quest. But I might hunt them if I see it. I might not think to do a Chatacabra quest, but I'll hunt it if I see it. There's so many monsters I wouldn't experience, and I ultimately think I wouldn't have even played the game quite as many hundreds of hours as I did if it wasn't for the fact that you could just go out and hunt without thinking about it, and even occasionally be surprised because, oh, there's a super strong tempered monster on the map, Uth-Duna, that I didn't plan on fighting, but sure, I'm here, I'll do it. And I love that the quest ending keeps you out in the map, and it just promotes existing out in the map and hunting the monsters and being around the monsters just because. And I definitely think that all that extra time being out in the map could be part of the reason why I'm so disappointed that the maps aren't a little more interesting. I like the monsters, I like the fights, I just wish there was a little more to do while you were spending so much time out in the wilds. But anyway, that is my list. 5 things that I liked most about Monster Hunter Wilds, 5 things that I liked least about Monster Hunter Wilds, and hopefully we get some changes, some innovation in Master Rank, some new features. I'm sure we will. Because just like this game coming out makes it a foregone conclusion that there will be a master rank, there will be an expansion, this feels like a really good start. I won't say it's perfect. It definitely has its highs and lows for me. I've spent a lot of time playing it and I've enjoyed it, but there are certainly some areas that I look forward to seeing what they do in the future. So with that, that is my list. Thank you for joining me today. If you liked the video, please like it. If you dislike the video, please dislike it because it's all the same to YouTube. And if you would like to see more of my jumbled random thoughts on this series that I love so much, please hit the subscribe button and I will see you all next time.